Housing Bureau. I'm Dr. Stephen Holt. I am the chair of the Oversight Committee. I hope you had an opportunity to sign in at the station and then also grab materials tonight. We've got a lot that we're going through, and I want to do as much as possible to give us appropriate time to address it, think about it, and be as reflective as possible. For those of you who are new to a Oversight Committee meeting, let me just kind of give you the elevator speech, that this is a meeting that's open to the public. It is not a public meeting. And what I mean by that is you have an opportunity to sit in and see the work of the Oversight Committee, and we follow the agenda as outlined, and we try to give room, give space for public comments. If you look at the agenda, there is room at the bottom of that for an opportunity for people to weigh in and ask questions or interact. We prefer that you do that in light of what we've covered on the agenda. However, because this topic is extremely important and on multiple levels with what's going on in our community and in our city, you may have questions and concerns that are not specifically outlined on this agenda, which is totally appropriate. Therefore, there are staff members of the Portland Housing Bureau that are here in this room that I would encourage you to speak with. Portland Housing Bureau staff, could you identify yourselves by lifting your hands, please? Okay, thank you very much. Those are the people that you would want to connect with. So, in light of that, welcome to tonight's meeting. It's been a little bit. Hi, Oversight Committee. Hey, everybody. Hey. Haven't seen you in a little bit. It is good to see you. Feels like quite some time since we've been in this space together, which is why the agenda is so full as it is. In light of that, we're going to get going. We're going to invite Dana to the mic and let you introduce yourself, and you can present your information. Hi.
Hi, good evening. I am Dana Ingram Shepherd tonight. I am getting ready to give you all just a quick update about the Neighborhood Housing Preservation, also known as Neighborhood Housing Program. And all right, here we go. So this slide is just giving you an idea about our RFPs that we've just recently put out. We've put out a $160,000 solicitation for home repair grants. This is significant because in your handout you should have like the updated quarterly reporting, and the home repair grants, if you remember previously, the goals, they were a little bit higher, and that's because we are increasing the grant amounts per household. So they're averaging $10,000 now instead of $5,000, and we all spoke about that previously. So you'll see that adjustment on the home repair grant portion in the bottom left-hand corner. If this is in the packet, I hope so. Yeah, it's in the packet. Okay, all right. As far as the status of that, we have received a few proposals, and we are actually reviewing those at the moment and have not made a decision about those. All right. So we've spoke about this a few times. We've now renamed it to Homeownership Asset Preservation Pilot Program. So we were calling it the Homeownership Retention Program at one point. So just to let you all know where we are with that, we did put the solicitation out, and it does close on Monday, actually. And this was the $200,000 CDBG funding. It is going to be a 20-month pilot program. And then you can see the timeline right there as far as how we're going to move forward. One of the requests here is that two of you at least join us on the evaluation committee. We really, really hope that you can do that. And if you can please either contact myself, or I don't believe Barrett's information is on here, but if you can please let me know. Matter of fact, if you know right now, the date that we are going to have the meeting is October 2nd, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. But we really do need and hope for two of you to join us on that evaluation committee. And if you don't volunteer today, we will ask Leslie to email you tomorrow. So, yes, and then Monday. All right. Any questions about that? We've spoken about that quite a bit. This is the program where we did the community engagement.
I don't really have
And
a question, I just have a comment. And my comment is that I'm excited that we're going to move forward in this direction and create a process to really examine how we do what we do and support families. So that's exciting to see.
good. We had, just to give you a little bit more, we had a really, really good information session where we invited the community, whoever was interested in responding, and it was really, really, really helpful. We had some meaningful conversations with some nonprofit attorneys. So it was it made us feel really, really good about what we put out there and people's interest in providing these services. So I'm going to move on. Since it has been a while, we did want to just update you on what's going on as far as home ownership goes. And so, first of all, I think it's about 18 months ago where that $1 million in CET funds were awarded or put it to the side, and I am just really, really happy to say that 100% of that $1 million has been allocated to 10 families. So in the past year, and so I think 7 of them have already closed, and so the other 3 are very, very close to doing so. Then since last September, there have been 16 additional new preference policy homeowners. That's awesome. Yes, and so you're going to see the breakdown of that in just a little bit, and 4 additional homeownership units added to the Interstate URA housing stock, thanks to PCRI and the Williams project. Yes, and I believe 3 out of those 4 have already closed. I think there's just one more person that has not closed. So, very, very, very good.
So Dana, real
Yes.
quickly, of those 16 additional new preference policy homeowners, are the 3 from PCRI in that 16 number?
Yes, they are, I believe, and I'm going to turn around and make sure I'm right with Ira. That's correct.
Okay,
All
thank you.
right. And then we talked about the second round of preference policy that was a part of the presentation last time from the policy team. That has now completed, and I believe there were about 600 or 700 people that applied for the homeownership preference policy round last time. Yeah, just join me. This nice chair is for.
Good evening. My name's Ira Bailey. I'm a housing program coordinator at Portland Housing Bureau. And I don't know the specific number, but it is about 660, 670 households who signed up for the second round of preference policy.
Awesome, thanks.
Sorry, and the second round of the preference policy is for the 50/20 condos?
Oh, that is correct. And for those families, we also opened up the Olin and Kilpatrick properties as well.
Thanks.
And any remaining DPALs, if folks can find a home on the market in the Interstate URA, happy to use the down payment assistance available. So, all right. So now there have been a total of 29 families I've identified through the preference policy who've received support to become first-time home buyers. 15 of those with the Northeast TIF resources, so that contributes to our 110 goal that we spoke about and was approved back last September. 7 with the citywide resources, the construction excise tax, like I spoke about. And again, 3 are out shopping right now. And then 3 with Prosper Portland, which is also in the same area, the Interstate URA. And just as a reminder, the AMI levels for Prosper Portland funds are there. The Prosper Portland has a 80% to 120%, but we did stop it at 100% so that it wouldn't interfere or compete with our goals for the Northeast TIF resources. And then there's 4 households without PHB subsidy. So that means you all have probably heard about these households. I believe one person inherited a home or bought a family home, and there's some other instances. But these are people that came through the preference policy in between then and now have purchased, but not with our subsidy, but working with our partners. And here's just a breakdown Of the 15 households in the with the Northeast TIF resources, 100% of the families are Black, African American. And then you can see the rest. Hopefully it's large enough for you to see and read on your own. Because I can't see. All right. All right. And I don't have a whole lot of detail regarding the new developments as far as the different stages in development, but this part was very important to our team because our job is to make sure that there are folks ready to purchase and occupy these homes. So we just provided the construction completion date, occupancy date, from what I understand is about 2 to 3 months after that. So this includes Olin, Kilpatrick, both phases 1 and 2, the 50/20 condos, which is the primary marketing for our second round of preference policy. And again, the PCRI Williams homes, which are completed. And then there are a number of different PCRI scattered sites that they are developing. And all of these properties are located in the interstate URA, and obviously have the overlay of requiring the preference policy. And both rounds 1 or 2 actually can qualify for most of those, actually, the ones that have the PHP investments. Before I ask for questions, I just want to remind you that we need 2 people for the evaluation committee for the RFP. Now, questions?
Questions and/or comments
Comments?
from the oversight? Felicia?
Dana, I do apologize. I went and looked at my calendar. I'm booked solid in meetings. Otherwise, I would help, because 3 hours is a lot.
I
but I
know.
looked.
I know.
And so if there's another way I can volunteer, let me know, besides a whole 3-hour block. I didn't realize was that much time.
Yeah.
What do you think is the big difference this time around in seeing the progress that we're seeing? It's great progress.
First of all, I think that we did things a little bit differently with this round of preference policy. I think the first time we didn't know exactly what we were doing or what was going to be on the market. And then the market changed significantly really fast in the middle of all this. And I think we did not really, all of us, we didn't really give ourselves enough time with the target market that, the folks that we were looking for to buy these homes. So I think it's time. I do think that the increase in homeowners actually is a result of folks starting back in 2017, and now they're coming to a point of mortgage readiness. So we talked about time, and it does help when we're adding like PCRI units. That helps. I don't think that folks would have been able to find those 4 homes on the market in that area at all. And then I have a few reasons, but then we also just kind of streamlined our process as well with the partnerships. We're working with Portland Housing Center, and we're able to get the information that we need, and then they're working with the other partners as well. So if there's anything else you could add to that?
One of the other changes that we made was we removed the bottleneck that was initially in the process by limiting the number of families that had access to the homebuyer education and the homebuyer counseling. So when we expanded the number of families who had access to those services, it also increased the pool of people who were able to take advantage of the down payment assistance that was out there.
Committee, any other comments? Jillian?
I don't know if you can speak to this. Can you talk, if you can you tell us a little bit about the delay with the 50/20 condos? I see that June 2021 is the completion.
I don't know if that's actually a delay. I believe that's what we planned. I may be wrong.
Okay.
It seems to me that, so my question is, and back to the time issue, that it just took us longer than we anticipated to help these families get to a place of being prepared, mortgage ready. How many people are still in the pipeline or actively in the pipeline? Are there people who are actively in the pipeline beyond the numbers that are captured here? Do you know that?
I believe that I do.
Because while we celebrate the fact that we went from 7 to 16 finished, 29 families, et cetera, that's a great celebration, but that's not by any means the numbers we projected. We're coming to the end of our projected timeline, so it'd be nice to know where we're at.
Okay. I don't have the exact numbers right here. However, I can say that the Housing Bureau has referred a few hundred people to the Portland Housing Center. And so past that, we still have about 400 people that have not been referred to the Portland Housing Center from this last round. So I don't know the exact number of folks that the Housing Center is working with that are like really active, and they are happy to provide that report if we ask for that. I did not get that tonight, though. Is there more?
No, I was just going to say it should be roughly around 200, I would say, is the number that they're actively working with.
Excellent. Any other comment from Oversight Committee? Well, thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thanks for your work. Next, we have a presentation from the Business Operations Manager of Portland Housing Bureau. If you would introduce yourself, ma'am.
Yes, now it's on. Hi, I'm Leslie Goodlow from Portland Housing Bureau. I'm the Business Operations Manager. And Dana and I are going to talk to you about the $1.8 million that the Bureau received a couple years ago from Prosper Portland, their CDI. They allocated $5 million to the Bureau, 1.8 for an ADU program, 1.6 for down payment assistance, and the remaining 600, 800, I don't know. Whatever the remaining amount was for home repair.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes.
It was 800.
800,000 was for home repair. As most of you will remember, the ADU program that was presented to the Oversight Committee was not approved. You all did not support that program going forward. Neither did the mayor. So we at the Bureau have decided not to pursue an ADU program. And so the CDI is asking what...
Excuse me for one moment. When you say ADU, if you could explain that, and then CDI, if you could also identify those, that'd be great. Thank you.
accessory dwelling unit is ADU, and the CDI is the Community Development Initiatives for Northeast Portland, Prosper Portland funds, which is the interstate urban renewal area funds that they have available. You're welcome. So today, we would like to present to you some options because the CDI would like a recommendation from our Oversight Committee and from the Bureau about this $1.8 million so that they can make a determination of whether or not to take the money back, to split it with us, let us keep it, et cetera. And so as Dana mentioned a few minutes ago, in that group of folks that went over to PHC, there are 50 or so families that meet, that are above 80% AMI, which is what the Prosper dollars are supposed to go for. There are 10 or so that are, that can be mortgage ready within 6 months. We have 13 slots still available from the 1.6 million that they gave us for down payment assistance. So that's sufficient for the 10 or so that we've got that we think is going to be ready in 6 months. And as she and Ira mentioned, there's still about 400 people from the most recent preference policy round that have not been have not been income verified. So there could be another 100 people in there, or there could be 20. We don't know yet. And based on the time frame that the CDI is requesting a recommendation, we don't have enough time to go through and do that analysis of the people that are in the pipeline. 80 to 120%, but we've been focusing on the 100 to 120 because the up to 80 is, or up to 100%, somebody could buy a 3-bedroom under our dollars. So it would depend on what they were, if it was somebody at 100% and they only wanted to buy a 1-bedroom, then they would use these dollars. If it was somebody at 100% and they wanted to buy a 3 or 4-bedroom house, they would use our dollars. Correct? Okay. So our ask to you tonight, and I'm running through this real quickly and we'll have some time for you all to ask questions, is for you to assist us in making a recommendation to the CDI. And we basically have 3 options. One is we say we're going to give the $1.8 million back to them to use for one of the other programs that they have identified in their, they have 4 program areas, and for them to use it in one of the other 3 program areas. The second option would be for us to keep all 1.8 and use it for, potentially for down payment assistance, or we would have to work with them if we thought we could use the money for something else. Or we ask to keep some portion of that 1.8 that we could continue to use for down payment assistance for folks that are between 80 and 120% of AMI. At this point, we can't say exactly how many we will need, but we want to hear your thoughts on whether or not we should ask to keep any of it, we should turn it all back, or whatever. What do you think of? And we'll answer questions. So that's the spiel. And
Questions, committee members? Mike.
Why not? So how would goals be met if it's turned back?
our goals are not contingent on this $1.8 million. So our 110 goals that we set is not contingent. This would be additional. That's why on the slide, you want to go back to that slide, where Dana put how many people had purchased. You can see that the Prosper folks are separated from our goal is for that, where it says 15 with Northeast TIF resources, that should be 110. So that's the goal for that group, is 110, and everybody else is extra, is additional.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other comments? Lisa?
Do you have a proposal of what to do with it? Or is this like a totally open, like, what do you think?
Well, some of it is, what do you think? I mean, we can make a proposal that you guys can respond to, but we wanted to hear what you think about these dollars from one advisory group that we're now making a recommendation to another advisory group, as opposed to it just coming from the Housing Bureau.
So from my perspective, anytime we have an opportunity to weigh in and help people become homeowners, to me, that's a leverage and something that we should take advantage of and something we should push for. As we remember, the accessory dwelling unit concept was just not prepared in a manner that was going to be, I think, reflective or efficient to reduce stress and increase wealth and support families, et cetera, et cetera. So if there were a thought, and I want to hear from each of you around this, I would love to see dollars being allocated toward home ownership. If there's a way for us to push that forward and support families to get stabilized in that manner, I'd love to see that happen. But I want to hear from the thoughts of the Oversight Committee. Yep. Felicia? Yeah, I'm just going to go right around the circle. So in essence, my recommendation, I'm suggesting as a recommendation back to the CDI, is that those dollars that have been allocated for the ADU become reallocated to support home ownership. That's what I'd like to see happen, but I want to hear from the Oversight Committee with your thoughts.
So from the data that you presented, you said right now, under the preference policy, I wanted to get clarification. You said we have 50 homeowners in the, 50 preference policy people that are in the 100 to 120 MFI, with 10 that could be ready in the next 6 months? Correct. And so when I look at that data, I would say the money, that could be a direct correlation to where we could allocate those funds when I look.
Okay, well, we still have 1.3 million left of the original 1.6 that they allocated for down payment assistance,
So we have 2.9 then, is what you're saying?
potentially.
If we take that other 1.8, or if we suggest that that 1.8 be reallocated, it becomes added to the 1.3 that exists.
So we would have $2.9 million that could be flexible above 100% to 120% MFI, is if that could be an option, is what I'm hearing? I'm just trying to ask questions first.
Yes, that's correct. And once we hit our other goals, it can be the whole 80 to 120%. We can use that. And so the 50 you were talking about is between the 80 and 100%.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
The reason I'm asking all these questions is in an area, if from, just for the audience perspective that doesn't work in home ownership, 80% of median family income for a family of 4 isn't very much in comparison to what it costs in the URA. 120% is actually much more realistic in the URA based off of what I've seen in the market. And so I see where Dr. Holt is going, and I would say for as far as a committee in trying to help people get back into the community, I see a lot of younger professionals of color that grew up in Northeast Portland that make above 80%, but below 120 that can't purchase. And so if this gives us an opportunity to be able to help those people, I would really, really encourage that.
Thank you very much.
Do you mind if I add one more thing, just to make sure that everyone knows that the Prosper Portland does want these families to be recognized through the preference policy, so they are part of our existing list. It isn't that we don't have the opportunity to go out and market and outreach again.
Yeah.
And that's why I asked you for those clarification for those specific numbers through the preference policy, because that was my assumption, that they have to be preference policy people.
Ms. Virgin.
Yes. I would be inclined to support home ownership, and the reason for that is they've given us the money, and because we haven't used it doesn't mean we can't. We have the applicants, we know things change over time, and even as we speak today, there are probably people that are eligible at this point to be a homeowner. And if we can somehow support that, I would encourage that we keep the money and apply it towards home ownership, and to help those who have in the past have not been able to participate, but may be able to participate now.
Thank you very much. Jillian, your thoughts?
I also support the idea of allocating some of the funds for homeownership. Given the recent this legislative session and the passing of HB 2001, which is it's a state law that's compelling jurisdictions when you add an ADU, that you can't not add an ADU due to off-street or on-street parking requirements. And basically it's kind of changing single-family zoning. So I would hate to have a missed opportunity here to revisit the ADU program. I just think that maybe it needed some tweaking. So it's just a suggestion that while I think the best use of these funds are to deploy them as quickly as possible, it would really be a shame to lose out on the opportunity to develop accessory dwelling units and kind of increase density in a way that can be beneficial for current homeowners, as well as increase the rental stock.
Thank you, Marlon.
It's a complex question, but I would definitely be in support of home ownership and some money going to units, to the building of new units for multi-generational families, because the families are getting bigger, not smaller. And I don't know if everyone wants to be a homeowner. So I know there's a lot of folks who want to be homeowners, but not everyone wants to and wants that responsibility. So maybe some way to figure out how to provide funding for home ownership and at the same time multi-family units.
Okay, I'll circle back on that. Sheila?
I'm getting back up to speed with everything. As it relates to the 1.8, one of the things that I think would be important is exactly what Felicia said. If there is a way within the confines of how we have to use the dollars that we can be more responsive to those young professionals or those young folks who grew up here, had to move out, but would like to come back and are not too far over the income guidelines, or that we can allow them to come back in. When I moved here into Northeast Portland, I took advantage of the first-time home buyer program that the state had at that time. And I've been here ever since. So I think being able to help young professionals to come back is a good way to help strengthen the community and give it a more equitable and diverse face.
Okay.
Thank you. Lisa?
Quick question, is the down payment assistance amount the same for this moderate income group?
Yes, it's $100,000.
So the 1.6 that's gonna be kicked basically with the 13 people who are in the pipeline, or the,
So we have 1.3 left of the original 1.6 because we've used 3.
and there's 10 more people.
So we have 10, so that would leave us with 300,000 if we use 10.
Okay, so
And then the 1.8,
so there's 3 more, there's capacity for 3 more people in the current down payment assistance. Okay,
correct?
great. I also was thinking about HB 2001 because it also expands for duplex, tri, and quad construction on lots. And I'm thinking also back to the sort of quick strike purchase of houses early in our time as the oversight committee to move them into, I think that was for Proud Ground. I mean, I just want to see you buy some stuff, buy some properties that can be built on a quad, or buy some houses that are in this 300 to 350 range.
So it sounds to me, because the question I put to us was about the reallocation of the 1.8. And what has happened around the table, and I appreciate it, is the possibilities of this or that. And I don't know that we've got the scope and or time or capacity for the possibilities of. I do know that we have 1.8 at this moment, and have an opportunity to weigh in on that 1.8. And so it would be helpful if we're going to make a recommendation that it's as succinct as possible. To Sheila's point, And to Felicia's point in regard to assisting families and young professionals, et cetera, we have families that are in the pipeline. We have people who are in the pipeline presently and are in the process of qualifying based in that criteria. Those are the people we would be helping. We can't be selective. These are the people who are going through the process, and we would have to assist those who are in the process. I want to make sure we all understand that. The ADU process itself, I have no idea, to Jillian's point, I have no idea how long it's going to take to bake that and make that work. I do know we've got 1.8 in our coffers at this moment. We have a couple hundred people that want to buy a house, and 1.8 helps us help 18. And so with the box we have, I'm suggesting that we use the box we have with the dollars we have in the process that exists to move that forward. I think that's the recommendation, not to exclude the other things that matter, but I want to be very succinct and clear around what I'm asking us to weigh in on and not to dismiss anything that I've heard. Does that make sense to us? Feedback, comment?
I understand what you're saying. I honed in on the fact that it's, the 1.8 is from a different set of funds, and so it's above what we get.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Right, but we have to use the preference policy to select those people.
Yep, we have to use the process and our policy that's in place.
But there are quite a few younger people that are also in the preference policy pot. In this second round, people have done a good job of telling others. So we're seeing generations come through. So it'll be interesting to maybe get the data from PHC on what the second round looks like, because I think that would also be helpful for us.
So if I could just say, add one more piece. So another option, and I don't know that they will agree to this, is for you as our advisory body in Northeast Portland, ask the CDI to give us more time to cook our recommendation around the 1.8 million before they make a decision. So there is that as a possibility. Now, I represent PHB on the CDI. They have asked for a recommendation for their meeting next week. I would go and present the recommendation, and they could say, nope, they could say, no, we're going to take the 1.8 since you didn't give us a recommendation, or what, I don't know, I can't predict what they're going to say, but that is an additional option, is for you to ask them to give us more time to put together more data about who's currently in the pipeline, so we know more about the other 400 people.
Could you give us a sense of the temperature of that room? Because we haven't met with them jointly in a while, and it's my recollection is the last time we met jointly that there were some members of that group that were feeling a way about why wasn't this money already spent? Why weren't people already? They were feeling like a little itchy to bring that back into their fold, and so I worry about saying, if we say, can you wait, without something that says, no, we feel pretty clear that, yes, we want to do something homeownership, or yes, we want to do something development, like whatever that is, that they would feel a little itchy about getting that back, although I'm unclear about what it is that they're exactly doing or the impacts that they're having.
So
As well.
it's my understanding, and I wasn't at the last meeting, and I don't know if there's anybody. I was hoping that Kimberly Moreland would be here. They are a little itchy around this 1.8 million. They would like to move it into the PIP program. And Bishop, do you remember what PIP stands for? I do not. But that's a grant program that they use for small business. And so that money they've eaten through that money that was allocated to that program. And so it's my belief and recollection that they would like to move this 1.8 into to that program. If we don't believe that we can use it, or whatever the case may be, if we don't have a recommendation for how to use the funds.
It's called Prosperity Investment Program
Thank you.
at Prosper Portland. That's not very descriptive.
We agree.
I didn't come up with the name, Miss Lisa.
Okay.
So what say you,
I want
oversight?
this
Go ahead.
bureau to get stuff. I really want, I have been since prior to this committee talking about people in the pipeline to buy a home are not going to be able to buy a home at the prices that you have on this chart because those homes do not exist. They have to be made for this program. I just, as you were talking, I sort of did a little glance on the apps of how many properties are there for under 350. There's not a lot. And every property that's going to be redeveloped into a duplex or a quad, we're all seeing them around the neighborhood. They're $800,000, $900,000 for a duplex. But how do we move those properties that are developable up to 4 units, or a unit and an ADU that could be income generating for someone in a townhome, into a 350 per unit, 4 units? That seems like a great investment to me. And that's the way that this supply and demand is gonna mesh together.
It's a great question. Shannon?
Good evening, everyone. Shannon Callahan from the Portland Housing Bureau.
Good afternoon, evening.
Good afternoon, evening, and good morning to you. Since I started my morning with some of you at this table as well. So, Dr. Bates, would you be interested, or what you'd be proposing is actually land acquisition for later future development into smaller quadplexes, triplexes, et cetera? I mean, I just want to be frank with you about what 1.8 can really do in terms of development costs. I think you guys have all seen the cost of what development costs. So we have to purchase the land and then development. Would you be actually proposing that we acquire some land for future development? I'm really trying to play it out with you a little bit.
I think you should acquire anything you can acquire. I think you should acquire a land with a house on it that can support a duplex. You should acquire a vacant lot. You should acquire any property that is redevelopable, particularly under new zoning, that is available. And I mean, there was that quick strike purchase that was resold, right? That was a revolving amount of money. Like, I get it. Everyone wants to talk about building everything and is $200K per door, and it takes us 20 years to get the money together, But like, we need different creative ways to do this, but we're not going to do it if we don't have the places to do it on.
Agreed. So what I'm trying to check with you just is, are you actually thinking it's a land acquisition strategy? Just in terms of, I want to be realistic with you about what 1.8 can actually probably accomplish, right? It could be, we could put our heads together and do some planning and figuring out for you, or, we could just propose to go out and buy lots or available land within the URA for future.
Do not buy a lot to build another 60-unit building. I'm talking about in the context of homeownership, like open Redfin, buy the things.
I hear you, but and 1.8 is not going to buy us a piece of property that could buy 60 units. I mean, 1.8, homeownership lots, just lots alone, probably in this district are at least $250,000, $300,000 just for a lot. So I'm in agreement with you. I'm just trying to make sure that we're sharing the same concept together. So you would be proposing that we buy up land for future development. Great. Thank you.
And just for clarity for me, I'd still like the other idea that for the young professionals, but I hear you. If we're land banking, the devil's in the details of how you would do that, and how long you would hold it, and how do you earmark it for specifically home ownership and not the next best opportunity, quote unquote, that might come along. So those would be things that would be important to me in that process.
So I will ask a different question for our Oversight Committee then. I will ask this question: are we then thinking? Obviously, I think we all value home ownership, and that's ultimately what we'd like to see. It sounds like there are variations around what that looks like. And so are we then, for recommendation's sake, do we want to recommend to the CDI, give us 2 months to determine a specific strategy for that 1.8, hold on to it, don't take it back? What's our recommendation to give to Ms. Goodloe to take to the CDI, who meets next week? And I don't think we want to have no recommendation, because I think they will say we're going to pull the dollars. So, yes.
I think it sounds to me like we have consensus that we want this money to stay with PHB and we want it to be dedicated for home ownership. What flavor that takes, I think, is to be determined, but I don't know that we need to know exactly how that money is going to get deployed to say we want to keep it at PHB and we want to keep it in the preference policy and we want to dedicate it to home ownership. I mean, if that's enough of a recommendation for the CDI, I don't think that there's any reason to wait. I think that Dr. Bates made a really good point that the CDI seemed itchy with that money, and I would hate to say, can we have some more time, and then the answer be no, when actually we kind of know what direction. I mean, it sounds like we have a direction. It's just, picking the road.
Absolutely. Would the
if anyone disagrees, if I misheard or misheard.
No, I think that's fine to leave it open enough so we can spend our time to define what that specifically would look like, how it gets disseminated, et cetera, how we allocate it or leverage it. But am I safe to say that the Oversight Committee, the recommendation would be that we want to retain the $1.8 million to be used for home ownership? And we'll define what that is.
Yes.
Is that correct?
And I think it's fair
Yes.
because if the PIP can be as general as small business grants, I think we can be as general as home ownership.
Perfect. Excellent. There's your recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you, Oversight Committee. Appreciate it. Hill Block update from our Hill Block representative, who's been at, I believe it's been 26 meetings now for Hill Block. So thank you,
Seriously,
Jillian.
been 26 meetings.
It's on you.
It's been a lot. It's been a lot of meetings. Hi, just to refresh everybody's memory on what the Hill Block Project Working Group is, now renamed the Russell Williams Project Working Group. So, even more staff. It's okay. If you want to know more information, anybody in the audience, you can go to prosperportland.us/hillblock, and that gives a little bit of information. But in a nutshell, it's approximately 1.7 acres near Legacy Hospital that was formerly taken by and displaced the residents there, taken by Emmanuel Hospital for the purposes of expanding the hospital, which never happened. And at this point, through negotiations between Prosper and Legacy, the idea is to give the property back and to develop it for the benefit of the African American community in Portland. To that end, we did a exercise, kind of a small visioning exercise that went over what we, as the working group, the priorities we wanted to take to the community and get feedback on. And there were 5 basic priorities. Well, each one has kind of a subgroup. So affordable housing, both rental and homeownership, has been proposed. Support for entrepreneurs and a small business incubator was one of the priorities. That education, workforce training, a food or supermarket, not mine, seems loaded, gathering space for the community, and then healthcare and social services, community space, arts and entertainment, and childcare, early childhood education. So those are the many diverse opinions of the project working group, and I want to bring it here, and my job is to get feedback on the housing committee's, oversight committee's view on which of those priorities we would like to see. I felt like I could probably answer that question, but as your representative, I am bringing it to you.
I have a
Thank you.
quick question.
Yes.
So what's the profile of the multi-use development, mixed-use development? What are the percentages they're talking about?
That is to be determined. So that is the task of the working group, is to figure out what we want the site to be.
How did they prioritize them?
So the first priority was support for entrepreneurs and housing were kind of the top topics that came up. Housing, rental, and home ownership, and condos, or land trust, or down payment, that was not, like the specifics around that were not determined. The goal, the end goal, the deliverable for the project working group is to determine what the programming of the site should be, and select a developer. So if it's, for example, if it were to be housing, the project working group say it's, affordable to what percentage, et cetera.
So there's not been any designing for the site
No, ma'am.
and no market analysis for the site?
No.
Jillian, I have a technical question.
Yes.
Who owns the site?
Legacy.
And so even though all the recommendations we're making, if anybody on the now called Russell Williams Working Group, at the end, Legacy could technically pull out at any time since they are the owners, right?
Well, yes and no. They would face their agreement with the city was to redevelop that property within a certain amount of time. They are beyond that certain amount of time. And so to avoid litigation with Prosper Portland, this is kind of the solution. So yes, technically they could, at the end of this 3 years, they could pull it back, but I think then they would find themselves in the litigation that they wanted to avoid.
And the only other thing I heard is, I'm just thinking about parameters when we make a recommendation. I heard that there has to be a health component to this. Is that correct? Like a clinic, a piece of it has to allow Legacy to be able to develop on the site. Is that correct or not correct?
Legacy would like space on the site. How much and for exactly what purpose has not been communicated definitively.
So that's not the African American Health Coalition?
No,
Yeah, they've not expressed that at this point.
no.
Aren't they contracting inside their current footprint?
I mean,
Like their hospital operations?
I don't know. I can't answer that question, I'm sorry.
Okay, so if I understand this process, the committee is going to say, this is what we would like, and then there's going to be like an RFP for a developer, or,
Yes.
and it will say, we want you to program the site to do these things.
Yes,
And they will be down to like AMI ranges, or they won't be.
yes,
If housing is recommended, if ultimately housing is recommended, right now, the working group has identified an area of priorities, and then each representative is to bring that information to the community that they represent and get feedback around those priorities, and then give it back to the working group to determine what will be those programmed things.
and to be clear, there's the only funding currently tied to the Hill Block project is the land itself. There are no
There's
It's
no
not in a
URA.
URA
That's what I was
currently.
gonna ask.
It's not in a URA currently.
Is it going to be?
We are voting on that recommendation at our next meeting, or at least that's what's on the agenda.
Okay.
So there are no TIF funds from either Prosper or PHB tied to it. There are no bond funds allocated. So there's the financing structure for whatever that programming is going to be is yet to be determined. So really what we're trying to do is get to a decision about what direction we want this, what do we want to see ultimately on this 1.7 acres.
Okay, and I see that we're gonna talk about the accurate indebtedness. I don't recall seeing this site on the list of things that were proposed, specifically in that conversation as we've had it thus far about the expansion of the,
That's correct. So this would be a minor adjustment if,
right, but to put money toward actually developing it from TIF would require someone to allocate that out
Yes.
of
Right,
either
so-
money that already exists, like the $1.8 million that we talked about, or it's on that.
So that's.
Yeah, but it's
that's-
not necessarily.
Right. So that's part of what I'm going to cover under the next topic.
Well, I guess I have a real dog in the fight of that long list of things that you said. I assume it's going to be some kind of mixed-use development that will have housing and some other stuff.
so I'm hearing you would like to see housing and other stuff.
That's what I believe will happen.
That's what I would like to
believe
see, but I won't want to.
will happen because of the size and location and zoning of the site. It will be some kind of mixed-use building that has some housing and some other stuff. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me to do detailed programming of that stuff in this moment. I do think it's important to get a commitment around site and building ownership and control and some form of marked memorializing. I mean, maybe that's not a right word because some people are not passed on necessarily, but an acknowledgement of what has happened, what is happening, why that is there. I'm much more interested in those pieces as part of the integrity of this process, the transfer of ownership, the actual transfer of ownership, and the transparent and real truth about what happened and why this is like this, why it's been like this, being on the site, than I am in having conversation about whether the commercial space in there on today is a childcare facility that is desperately needed versus a affordable food which is desperately needed versus any number of other things that are all desperately needed but can be figured out as it comes to a building that exists as opposed to another 26 meetings.
So, Dr. Bates, I just
don't
wanted to add, I represent the Bureau. I'm not a voting member, but I think what would be helpful is for this group to say, yes, we believe housing should be on that site to support.
Yeah, thank you. That makes it more clear.
To support that as a priority, because everyone on the project working group did not make that a priority. It just happened that the people that were at the meeting when we did the priority exercise, several of them indicated that housing should be a priority. So I think, and Jillian, if I'm, speaking out of turn, what would be most helpful is for the oversight committee to say, yes, we believe that some form of housing should be included in the package that goes to a developer for the Hill Block site.
I think the site should have housing.
Thank you.
And if there is a concern on the side of Prosper and the PIP and whatnot about a lack of physical space for a number of kinds of business developments, that they should use their money to buy down many of the totally empty commercial spaces in this ICURA for people who are having businesses or whatever else that they need to do.
Thank you.
I think in the last 10 years, I've been on 4 different committees that have looked at that gym over in the corner that everyone wanted to actually realize the promises that have been made for the community. It's at the corner of the start of the city's historically black business district. It's the start into the area where we lost a lot of homes, and the city used to have a lot of black-owned home ownership in comparison to the rest of the country even. So I'm good with a mix. I know that there had even been talk, folks were looking at the model that the Mercado is over in southeast Portland, and they saw that as the potential of some kind of combination that has some cultural, vitality and diversity in it, as well as addressing what you were just mentioning, Doctor, and that is the historical reason why this site is important and having some way to have it reflect that. The thing that bothers me, and Jillian, I just need to understand, you said something about 3 years, and I didn't quite hear that. The idea is not to have folks play with this land for a while and then give it back again permanently.
I could not agree more. So we have had 26 meetings to date. I was part of the subcommittee that drafted the charter, so I've been at many, many meetings since we started. We meet once a month, and on our timeline with the MOU that we currently have with Legacy and Prosper, we have 12 meetings left to select a developer. So that's where we're at the moment. I also wanted to address, Dr. Bates, your question about the history of the site and how it was taken and why it's being offered at this time, and that was memorialized in the first couple paragraphs of the Project Working Group charter, which is on the website. A link to the charter is on the website. And the MOU.
I think it needs to be on the site. I'm interested in the site itself.
I see what you're saying.
Incorporating
I didn't understand.
visual and visible,
1% public art or something.
yes, yeah, in the public art or et cetera.
So Sheila, are you in agreement that housing should be on that site?
Yes, I
Okay,
am.
wonderful, thank you. Marla, thoughts? Just because our time is running. So. I appreciate the comments, though. It's valuable.
I'm definitely in agreeance that housing should be on the site. That's kind of what we're here for. So definitely my number one priority is housing. What that looks like, we can figure out later, but yeah.
Bird, you want to hear from you? Yeah, I'll come back to you.
Okay.
I support housing,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
Felicia, and then we'll go back to you, Sheila.
I support housing, but the thing I want to add that Lisa said, and I want to put this in public comment, that I want the Russell Wilson, whatever it's called, Williams project, sorry.
Russell Williams.
I have done that multiple times.
Is a permanent fixture that acknowledged why on the site, and that the things that were lost on that site be replaced on that site. So it's housing, it's businesses. I think that it needs to be an actual replacement of the actual loss, so that the committee is focused, all those things historically that were lost should be replaced on the same site. So if it's housing was lost, business owners were lost, everything that Sheila said, because in the acknowledgement of the history of the rebuild, it could be the legacy that comes back.
Thank you very much, Sheila.
She said it.
Boom. There you go.
All right.
So you've got a voice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jillian. We appreciate it very much. Let me acknowledge, before we go to our next section, Tia Williams, who is the new PHB liaison from the mayor's office. Thank you. If you turn around, hold your hand up so everybody can see Tia. You tonight get a chance to sit there, but going forward you will be up here with everyone, so we get a chance for.
Tia, you have to sit up here next time.
Yes, she gets to. She gets.
Oh, she has to.
She gets to. Okay. In light of time, we are now almost at 7:20, and we've still got two very big things to talk about. We're going to kick it back to Ms. Goodlow. Budget recommendations. And if you could contextualize this for the team, this would be great. I'm going to ask you, Oversight Committee, to be prepared to engage with questions and/or comments and/or suggestions as much as possible. So thank you.
So, good evening. 2 weeks ago, I sent you all a packet of the current year program offers for the Portland Housing Bureau and asked for you to review it in order for tonight for us to have a discussion around possible recommendations for changes to things we're doing, recommendations for additional things, such as the case management program that's now being RFP'd was suggested from this committee, and now we're doing that with CDBG funds. And so you are the fourth group that I have met with. I met with our Portland Housing Advisory Commission, with our Renter Services Commission, with the Fair Housing Advisory Council, and now meeting with you to get ideas about our budget for next year. We are asking for feedback much earlier in the process. So previously, you all had been asked for recommendations after the budget has already been submitted. As we have taken our report to council, and the commissioners have said, oh, if you have a suggestion, well, the budget's already submitted at that point. And so Shannon and I have worked to put together a plan where we can solicit community input much sooner in the process. We are planning a community budget forum in October, where we will invite people to come in and be able to sit down and talk about the program areas and suggestions for us to then make recommendations to the mayor. And then he will decide what types of things that he wants us to prioritize for changes for next year. So that's the context of the discussion. I know that there's a lot in here, and so we are running a little bit behind time. So if there are things that you would like to see that you already know, if you could say what those things are, as you could, we have until September 30th for you could email me information if you would like a little more time to think through, but I would like to just hear if there's anything right now.
I don't know if anyone else on the committee feels this way. I have been in this particular seat for, 4 years, since I think we started in 15.
15.
And then a year before that, helping to form and put all of this work together. And I can't think of the number of meetings that have been a part of this process. And I say that to say the documents, the information, the amount of things that I've read and looked over have helped to scale me to understand government speak. But when I read this particular report, I felt like, what am I reading? And so it is government speak at its finest. So I was in a state, and I have a reasonable amount of intelligence, but I was in a state of, And I don't know if anyone else has had that experience looking through these documents. So my ask of Ms. Goodlow and my ask for Ms. Callahan would be to two things. One is, if you can because of the work that you do, kind of speak to some things that you think would be germane to us as an oversight committee. If you could highlight and say, here's some things that would be worth looking at, and then break it down in plain people speak, would be wonderful. And then secondly, my second ask is that the committee then weigh in on those or express how you think we should weigh in. There are some specifics that I'm going to talk about in a moment, but so if you could do some of that, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
One of the things I can do is I can give you some ideas of what other committees looked at, so that can help you guys frame maybe what your suggestions are or things that you might like to think about, just to give you some examples.
I think, Leslie, there's one thing that would be really helpful for this committee that was helpful for me on the other committee when I saw that. Things that you can't do anything with, we should avoid that are, that are federally tied, and things that we actually do have say, I thought was really helpful from the last committee. I'm trying to put it in layman's terms. Bishop.
Thank you, and thank you, Dr. Holt. What I will say is that this is a very dense document, and this was not necessarily intended for you to be able to have that kind of weigh in. I think what we were wanting to do is show you for full transparency. This is actually what the Housing Bureau's budget is, and I don't know if we have shared with you in its entirety what that is early on. And I will say that, not in our defense, but this was the first time that the city had used this type of budgeting, which was last year. All of our managers right now are going through and using this as a template, and we're trying to figure out how we can explain what we do in words that doesn't involve things like GAAP, GAA, Government Accounting Practices, as an acronym, so that hopefully someone could read a budget document by the Housing Bureau and understand and be able to express it to other people. So thank you for reinforcing that, because it is very dense. But we also want to make sure that you have access to all the real, true information that we have very early on. What I would also suggest is that we can bring you back a PowerPoint that lays out not what we're planning for next year, but what's in our budget, showing you generally how funds are allocated. So a lot of our funds are actually to, of the $150 million in our current budget, most of those funds, for instance, are going to actual development. Obviously, a large portion of what we have remaining in terms are actually staff and staff delivery of our staff. But I would be happy to bring back and think through something that's a little bit more, hopefully, I would have a hard time explaining this document to you as director, so that's probably not the best document to have given you, but I think we could give you a better presentation on our budget earlier on. The one thing I do want to say is we are ahead of the mayor's budget guidance in coming to you. So normally what happens is the mayor gives all of the city budget guidance based on what the anticipated revenues for the city could be. So in the last years, we've been lucky enough to not have to decrease our budgets necessarily. We took a 1% cut last year, but we're not necessarily in an add position this year. So what we're wanting to talk with you about really with our committees is, are there places that you would like us to try and frankly reallocate funds? And that, not necessarily, are there programs that you may not or may think are more or less valuable? I have a feeling that if I were to ask this committee, you may say, I would think homeownership development may be more valuable than rental development. Maybe not, but it may be something just based on some of the themes I'm hearing from you over the last few months that I've gotten to sit with you. So I don't know, Leslie, if you wanted to, I know there were some cards up if there were any specific questions, but I know, Leslie, you could also give feedback on what you've heard from other committees.
So just to add a little bit more to what Shannon said, so the stuff for the joint office is like off the table. So that's off the table for the most part. I mean, I wouldn't go there. But just to give you some ideas of what other committees have talked about as suggestions, Our PHAC, our Portland Housing Advisory Council, they asked for a fund for tenants to organize. So for us to have a pool of money for if buildings, somebody buys a building and they are going to redevelop it, or they're going to take it to condos and they're going to evict everybody in the building. So that there are some funds to assist those tenants in how to organize, to try to work with the owner to prevent them from being displaced. They also.
Aren't there policies now around that, though?
There's relocation and some other things, but there are other types of things that tenants could organize around. I just use that as an example. They asked for minority home ownership, for additional allocation of funds for minority home ownership. They asked for us to potentially pilot a manufactured or modular home program, that we pilot something around that because it's a lower cost way to create home ownership. That was from our PHAC, and then from our Renter Services and Fair Housing Council, they asked for additional support for landlord and tenant training. They asked for a fund for tenants that are living in a building that the landlord has an exemption from paying relocation, so that those tenants can still get some assistance with having to relocate. They asked for expanded fair housing testing and enforcement. So those are some of the things that have come to us that we will be putting together along with any ideas that you all have for either reprogramming dollars that we have. If there's a program that you all think we just need to stop doing and do something else with those dollars, or take part of those dollars and do something else with, or if there's an ask, like, Commissioner Fish, the last 2 years when we've done our annual report, has said, hey, you all should ask for some money, and we've not asked for any money. So there may be something that we want to ask for, even though there may not be any money. They may find some money for you all to do whatever that thing is.
To give a stipend to all of these people who've given their hours and hours and hours. Wonderful.
That the committee should ask for a budget allocation to do some of the things that we said we can't pay for out of TIF, like the case management program that we're now going to
Like an
do.
education program that we've talked about.
Right.
In relationship to helping to educate families, et cetera, et cetera. Dr. Bates.
I have a lot of things on my list. I guess one question, or maybe this will be like for a future conversation, is the way that the Metro Bond money intersects into this budget, because that'll be a whole bunch of money, and that would be, I'm not sure how that hits into here. So that's in my question, and I have many comments on how I think that money ought to be allocated, unsurprisingly, which is that it must include allocations inside this URA because there is not enough money left to finish the work that was started, and because this is an objectively high opportunity area that must continue to have affordable housing. We cannot
I support that 100%.
We can't have a small number of regulated buildings and let everything else go to $1 million properties in the central city. So that's critical to me. And I'm also would like to hear in this future PowerPoint presentation lifting up. I did notice like there was some comment notes in here about equity, but what do we think, or what do others think, are the most important issues and potential impacts for African Americans across the city, not only in this URA, but across the city? In general, like of a specific program I would be interested in is a naturally occurring affordable housing preservation and a quick strike moves on buying buildings and properties to be preserved. We will never build as much as we are losing in the market at the pace and price at which we build regulated units. So I think we desperately need to be preserving the units that we have now. I would love to see the city not just in this bureau, but across multiple bureaus, rebuild the its community development capacity. I don't think there's holistic community development work or thinking being done across what's now BPS, PHB, and Prosper. I think that capacity has been lost. And in general, I think I've been impressed by, but needs a lot more capacity in PHB around policy development and implementation. The vast majority of people eligible for affordable housing do not live in regulated units, in subsidized units. They live in market housing that needs a legal framework, a policy framework, et cetera, around it. There's a huge demand from the community on anti-displacement policies and practices across a very wide variety of possible actions, from tenant protections or tenant opportunity to purchase. Some of those are things about buying stuff. Some of them are just things about anti-discrimination, et cetera. And I think there needs to be a much more robust capacity in the Bureau to do some of this policy implementation, testing, researching, and development work, not just building regulated units, but building an entire system in a city that does not push people out.
Excellent. Jillian. Yeah, you can clap. It's good stuff.
One comment, next time, could we get page numbers? It's really hard to get everyone to look at the same page that I'm looking at when I can't tell them what page to look at. So I know that's persnickety, but.
Yes, I will. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. So just so you understand, that these are individual program offers that get entered into a system that then we print out, so that's why they don't have page numbers. But we can create it into a PDF that adds page numbers in the future for you all.
Yes.
And I want you to know that I didn't say this, I didn't lead with this, and I should have, and that is thank you. Thank you for involving us in this process. I appreciate it. I appreciate the density of it, and believe it or not, I'm a data nerd. I love data that's specific. I just like to be able to interpret what I'm reading. So, Jillian.
So I had a couple questions about some of the budget items in general, things like, so there's the JOS housing placement and retention, there's other home ownership retention programs,
Yep.
And in the Northeast URA, I was just wondering, does that, are those funds deployed using the same lens that the housing strategy does?
So the JOHS is the Joint Office of Homeless Services. Joint Office of Homeless Services uses a variety of different strategies, including a coordinated access list for placement through their systems, as well as a variety of community-based providers. But they are not necessarily providing, they are providing assistance for people who are either experiencing homelessness or trying to prevent them from being homeless. So could you ask that question one more time so I can answer it more precisely?
I'll ask it more specifically. How are these, how in this URA are these programs being targeted to help Black people?
So I don't think that they are not tied to specific URAs as we are. But what I can tell you,
But the homeownership retention money is. that
they
other-
don't have homeownership retention money.
Not JOS, later on a page number that's
Hard to
later.
determine.
Homeowner, yeah.
So the homeownership retention services, if it is, which is what the Housing Bureau does, if it is within this URA, are deployed through either our loan products, which are done directly with our NHP team, or through local grants that we undertake with local providers. So that was what Dana was referring to earlier, which with the RFP. I think Dana is still here. Dana, would you actually mind answering that question more directly about who our providers are for the home repair grant programs within the URA? Thank you.
We're talking about interstate URA.
Yes.
Okay. Community Energy Project, REACH, PCRI, NEA, and nope. think that that actually might be it for interstate funds.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay,
Nope, and if I have one more.
okay.
I would like to see more funds dedicated to land banking and as a specific program objective for PHB. That,
Anything else?
and I don't know if this, when other public agencies sell land or their offices, is there a particular, does PHB get first bite at that apple?
Any land that is sold by another City of Portland bureau, there is a policy and has been a policy for the last 3 years now, I believe, that the Housing Bureau has first access to purchase that property. It's how we bought the Cary Boulevard property, for instance, that was recently brought into the URA for homeownership from the Water Bureau. So yes, that exists, but not necessarily in other governmental entities that are non-City of Portland.
Right. And is there, like, are there funds set aside specifically for that purpose?
No.
I think there should be. That would be that's my recommendation.
So many of the things that I would have said have been said. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Sheila, and I've got a couple comments, and our time is running.
I just want to tie back to what you said earlier. I do appreciate you guys bringing this to us ahead of the process and to get the input and also involving your community stakeholders. It would be good to have, this is the Bible that we can go back and get the details from, especially if it's not just something we are all really hard interested in finding out info. It would make it an easier process for folks to have your report, Shannon, that you talked about. Now, the thing that I'm curious about is in this, it talks about the IGA between Prosper, you guys, and Work Systems as it relates to under the Economic Opportunity Initiative.
Yes.
And it talks about how you're using, I'm assuming CBDG dollars and other dollars from different funds to be able to do case management and build wraparound services around homeless people so that they can get into jobs and into homes or shelter. That's the same kind of thing we're talking about for people who are in danger of losing their homes and are needing the home repair, needing the kind of case management services that'll let them know you have a gem here, you just need to do some things to be able to keep it. It has real value. And so I'm looking to see, why can't we do something like this through IGAs to do the same thing on the home repair side so that it's a full wraparound of services, so that it's not, so that they get the jobs, training opportunities or exposure, that they get the case management around how to do evaluate the property, what is its status, what it needs, and being able to get those loans to do the repair and to actually go down to the state or wherever they need to go to make sure that there are no encumbrances on the property so that they will lose it because grandma has, been allowing the taxes to go in her later years or what have you.
So the program that Dana asked for 2 people to participate on the review, that's what that program's.
But that was only for $160,000.
Well, 200,000. But so the IGA with Prosper is, and I don't want to go through the whole history, but it was part of the agreement when we split BHCD and PDC. Thank you. And that they would continue to fund work development, workforce development. And so we fund them and then they subcontract it. There's also funding in the joint office for helping people get jobs. So I'm not sure which program offer you were looking at, because you were talking about homeless people. So
Well,
there,
it says here in the first paragraph under the,
Go ahead.
so,
under-
there are two different programs, one that Prosper does and one that's done by the joint office.
What's the title of the program that you're looking at, may I ask?
it
Economic?
says Economic Opportunity Initiative,
Okay,
So-
program description and goals.
So if I understood what you were asking is, I think you were saying that maybe it would be, can I see if I understood so that you can tell me if I'm correct or not? That you would like to see some of this type of funding for the Economic Opportunity Initiative that is currently, Prosper is currently spending and putting out, to actually be tied into some of the programs that we're doing with the home repair and home retention programs, so that there's a connection between someone keeping their home and being able to have the workforce opportunity to grow, so that if we're finding someone through the programs that we're offering, that they're able to connect really easily with not just the wraparound case management that we're talking about RFPing out presently, but the actual workforce, so they can stay in their home. Is that what you were saying?
Right.
Okay.
okay.
So you get
Okay.
the full meal deal, so to speak.
So our time is shot. I do need to say this. One of the concerns I had as I look at the report and we begin to talk about equity impact, it would be great to have more meat, more detail around that. And I don't know if this would require staffing, but it would be wonderful that the equity impacts are tied into, and I can't speak to the other entities, but the equity impacts are tied into some of the things we've talked about around workforce building or development, capacity building, especially as it relates to MWESB contractors. That we are thinking, how are we helping to support these MWESB, and most importantly, the M and the W, more than the ESB, and if it's disaggregated, because more times than not, it's not. And then a specific comment, which I've heard repeatedly and it is exhausting to hear, is under the multifamily affordable ownership project financing, where we talk under the equity impact. In essence, it's hard to find MWSB contractors. We can't get them. We can't secure them. And that's just an exhausting report. I think that there are some answers for that. And so I want to speak to that. But our time is shot, but I wanted to raise it so we could be at least have it on record.
Thank you.
So if you have additional comments or you think of things later that you request for different programming, you can shoot me an email through the 30th of this month, and we'll be collating all of these together into a report for, into a list for Shannon to work with the mayor's office around how we're going to prioritize them and what are feasible and what are not. And thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. All right, our last item, obviously, we are past our 7:20 moment, but I do want to give adequate time for us to do what we need to do regarding this. So.
Okay. So, several months ago, probably a year ago, or a little over a year ago, we began the discussion about maximizing the indebtedness for the interstate URA. So everybody should have a packet that looks like this. And I'm going to quickly run through the slides so we have an opportunity to have some discussion. So the first slide is our August quarterly reporting of where we currently are in regards to the goals that we set for Northeast. And you can see from rental development that we are significantly exceeding the goal that we set for ourselves of 380 units. We are currently either completed or under construction 500, and actually it's 503 units, not 500. For home repair loans, we have exceeded the first dollar amount, which was assigned under the Northeast dollars, which was 80 households. We are currently at 83, but we have a goal of, what is that, 224. 204. I don't have my glasses on, so just trying to read it from the slide. But we are in progress. We are on target to reach the goal that we set for ourselves for home repair loans. For home repair grants, we are progressing as well. We have a significant amount of home repair dollars that we are working to get out the door within the interstate URA. And then Dana gave the update on home ownership of where we are with our goal of 110 homeowners, plus the 10 from the CET, plus the 13 we would have from, or the 16 we would have from the Prosper dollars. So that would be an additional 26. So tonight I brought a couple of maps for you so you could see. I know that's kind of hard to see where it is right now, but those maps show where we have spent either interstate dollars or granted tax exemption, limited tax exemption, and where we have built units within the URA. We currently have 1,534 regulated units within the URA, and 1,472 of them have used some city dollars, federal dollars, or TIF dollars, and then another 62 are regulated based on the limited tax exemption. The demographics, as you can see on the left or the right-hand side of that table, shows that 41% of the residents, and this was as of last year, so this data is from last year's reporting, because they report once a year. 41% of the residents were African American, and 21% are elderly, 27% are children, and 49% are single-parent households with an average income of just over $18,000 with a gross rent of $509. So that's the average rent for the regulated units we have in Northeast Portland, or in the URA. These are the projects that you all have reviewed and approved over the course of the last 4 years. We have 503 units either completed or in process, for a total of just over $40 million approved for multifamily or for rental projects. And this is the slide regarding where our goal of 110 homeowners with the 4 development projects, not including the PCRI scattered sites. So the PCRI folks would be included in the DPALs because they're using down payment assistance for their units. So this is a slide that covers how tax increment financing works. So if you think about how taxes are collected, there is a certain amount that is expected. And so the green line is the base, and then the orange line is any dollar above what the base is, and so that's the tax increment that comes to Prosper and to PHB. And then at the end of the district, that money goes back to the taxing district. So it would go back to the school district, back to Multnomah County, back to whatever taxing district. So we're the orange. The green is the base that continues to go to those other taxing districts, and then once the district is done, that's the blue on that slide. And so just a definition of maximum indebtedness, that's the maximum amount that can be borrowed over the life of the URA unless the plan is amended. And each URA defines what maximum indebtedness is. And so this next slide has is a table of what each URA in the city what their maximum indebtedness is, what the 5-year forecast is currently for remaining dollars, what the last date to issue debt is, which there is no last date for Interstate, and a number of acres available within the URA. So 3990 is the total number of acres. So within the URA's plan, we cannot increase the original area by more than 20%, and we cannot increase maximum indebtedness by more than 20% unless approved by all of the taxing districts. And so the amount that we would be eligible for is $67 million. And so this slide is the proposal that we put before you about a year ago of how we would allocate the $47 million. A little over $11 million would go towards the Cary Boulevard property for home ownership development. $15 million, which at the time we were in the process of buying the Strong property, and since our last meeting, we closed, and now we are the proud owners of a, 1.3 or just under an acre or just over an acre on the corner of Alberta and Williams that was formerly owned by the Strong family. So we purchased that property using interstate tax increment financing. And we believe that we will be able to put approximately 100 units on that property. Rental, more than likely, but we haven't decided.
We have no plans. We have been, as you remember, we were land banking. That was part of our land banking strategy. And so all of these buckets, as they were literally trying to give you some conceptual ideas of what we think would ultimately be 4 projects. Obviously, we know Cary Boulevard, we've already discussed, would be home ownership. But of the others, they were kind of conceptual ideas, and our concept of essentially thinking that we would get 4 significant additional projects out of these funds. And I think obviously as we would design and develop, we'd want to talk with you about whether home ownership or rental would be more appropriate if we were to move forward with this plan.
Thank you.
So the third box was just a placeholder for another potential rental development of $10 million that we believe, based on a subsidy of about $150,000, so you can do the math. And then the last box was our placeholder that could potentially be for the Russell Williams, not Russell Wilson, Russell Williams Hill Block site, if the site comes into the URA and if you all decided that you wanted to put TIF dollars towards that project, which is why it's still blank, because there's a lot of ifs and a lot of maybes in that. So the set aside of the $67 million is $46,900,000, which is just about 70% now goes to housing.
Mike, please, Mike.
The
Return your microphone.
split for interstate is 70% housing and 30% for economic development. So this slide is a picture of the Cary Boulevard property that you all approved going into the URA, or you recommended it go into the URA, and Prosper's board approved that several months ago. So that's another positive for us that now the property is included in the interstate URA. And then it's hard to see, but that's the new piece of property we just purchased on Alberta and Williams, the Strong property. You can see how large it is. There are a couple single-family houses on there now that would be demolished, and we would put something up, whether it's home ownership or rental was for a different discussion, but I wanted you to see what that property looks like. And so what the ask is for you all, and then we'll get to questions, is will the Oversight Committee support increasing the maximum indebtedness for the interstate URA? Will you make that recommendation to Prosper's board? so that they can decide whether or not to move forward with that, and that would include a large-scale notification. They have to notify and get approval from the county. It has to go to the city council. So there's a long process that goes into maximizing the indebtedness, but it starts with you and it starts with the CDI making that recommendation. And so I wanted to make sure you had information, and I'm happy to answer as many questions as I possibly can in the amount of time we have left.
Thank you very much. Questions, Oversight Committee. We are at 8. I would like to wrap by 8:10 so we can give time for community input. Unless we need to go longer, this is important. So, questions or comments?
Okay, I can't. So I just have this one question. When the ICRAC closed down, we left a set of goals and objectives that everyone said they were going to adhere to come heck or high water as we went through, especially if we went back to get more dollars. The emphasis that we placed at that time, if you go back and look at those goals, again, were on home ownership and home retention and jobs and training, small business development, kind of in that order. So,
So are you asking
your
where are we?
options that you had up there, how do they tie back to those goals?
So the options that we have would tie into the goals. So some of the homeownership goal, because we'd be adding at least 50 units of home ownership. We'd be developing on the Cary Boulevard property. Potentially other home ownership, depending upon how we allocate what we do on the Strong property. And for both those other two boxes, those could be home ownership developments or they could be rental. So that could increase our home ownership. I don't remember specifically what the goal was around home ownership. I know for rental it was 2,000 units and then maintaining the number that were already available with the 500 that we have in Northeast Strategy. That gets us just about to the 2,000 for rental. But I would have to go back and do some research on the home ownership, and I would have to also do some research from Prosper about whether the goals on workforce development and small business development have been reached.
And retention.
And retention.
Thank you. Other members? Jillian? Marlon? Your mic, please.
On the Strong property, the 100 units, you folks said that you haven't decided yet whether it was going to be rental or...
No, this was just a proposal for how we could allocate the dollars, and we know that we could do about 100 units on that piece of property given the size. But we've not gone any further than, okay, if with those two, what we could do, how much money it would cost based on about $150,000 subsidy per unit. And so that's how we came up with those amounts.
Comments? So the ask, are we ready to entertain the ask? The ask is, do we support recommending maximizing the indebtedness for the URA? We're just going to go around the table, and we'll begin with Sheila.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Marla?
I checked that first.
Marla?
I'm going to agree to it this time. I think I have seen enough folks inside PHP to know that there's going to be people making sure that concerns don't get overlooked, which was my original concern in deciding to increase the maximum indebtedness. So I've been in the housing committee long enough to know that there's a good amount of folks that are just going to keep tabs on what's going on and relay information back to us so that nothing gets missed, which was my original worry.
Jillian?
Yes.
Virgie?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, I would say it's 100%. Yeah, we accomplished that pretty quickly. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank
That's
you
worth-
very much. That's the first step. We still got a long road, but that's going to make a significant difference for you all to have made that recommendation. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We've gone through our agenda, and we are at 8:04. Amazing. At this point, we are opening it up to public comments. We have 2 signed up. If anyone else wanted to speak tonight, you will have 3 minutes, and I would ask, is this Shannon? Yeah, come on out. You have 3
Hello.
minutes. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, good evening. My name is Shannon Olive, and I'm the founder and president for a new women's organization called Women's First Transition and Referral Center. We work to serve women transitioning from prison, women in recovery, and women recovering from trauma to help them to overcome their obstacles so they too can rebuild their lives to become successful and productive citizens of our community. But I am also a longtime organizer in the social justice movement, working on issues that impacts low-income communities of color by allowing their voices to be heard and finding and creating solutions to get needs met. And I sit on the oversight committee to help allocate the $32 million to people of color through the TIF funds, but I needed to step down in 2017 to begin my nonprofit in 2017. I am here to talk today to speak about the preference policy. Born and raised here in Portland, Oregon, and 15 years ago, due to the gentrification, our communities were displaced to various parts of the city of Portland. A lot of the families in East Portland, Gresham, where our people call it, the numbers. As you know, if you didn't, when we were displaced, we were left there with no programs, services, jobs, and food deserts, no community gardens, a place with police activity, gang violence, drugs, increase of crime, the list goes on. But it's also a place where the government knows where we are, with just a lot of apartments and people. Oh, should I add a restriction over the years? If we as people wanted to move somewhere else, we could not because of the cost. Now here it is 15 and some odd years later, you have the preference policy that has been in place where you are encouraging us to move back to where you took us from our community, where we grew up from where a lot of us was born at, and would like for us to come back. This is a community now, families, where white families are, this is a community now where white families has settled in, the businesses are owned by white people, and annual household income is made of white families. Again, I run an organization working with black women who are transitioning back into society or getting their lives back from addiction or healing from domestic violence, homeless, sexual abuse. And when I look over the information about the preference policy and how much household income and the process, even what the size of these apartments are, it was traumatizing to me. And I had one of our women participants recently move into the Beatrice Morrow after completing transitional housing, and it took her 2 months because of her having to go through the appeal process because of her background and the other challenges she was facing in order to get approved and moved into her apartment and received her keys in June 2019. However, she is still having some issues when she initially signed up. According to your household income, she has a household of 5, and she was placed in a 2-bedroom, and according to the income, she was supposed to be making $57,000 a year.
at 60%, and even at 30%, $28,500 a year. She is a woman who just got out of prison in January and is working a part-time job at 4 days a week. The manager who screened her, we found out that she did the screening incorrect because she was not able to afford the rent without having a Section 8 base voucher. And when we met with the compliance manager back in the end of July, there was supposed to be open up the waiting list so she could apply for the 3-bedroom and start the process all over again and get the box checked for the project Section 8 base voucher. But they have not done it yet. If it wasn't for the Urban League assisting this mother and her family with written assistance for the rest of this year, she would be without a home. Lastly, I would like to say to you all who have rushed to bring our families home, where you should have not taken us from. But when you begin to plan how, what, where, you left one thing out, which was the families and the children who come from this place. Everyone deserves a home to live, no matter where their background is, but they should not have to go through barriers. But reviewing the income, I most definitely would love to see my people make $50,000 a year. But when you displace us and leave us in the desert without nothing and expect us to come back and meet your expectations, that's a problem. I believe you need to meet us where we are and work together so we can get there, and then we all can have a place of preference. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. Kimberly Horner.
Hello and good evening. I'll be quick with my comments. I'm Kimberly Horner. I am the new Executive Director for PCRI, and I just wanted to come out this evening to introduce myself to this team of people as well as the audience.
Hi, Kimberly.
Thank you very much. So I look forward to doing all those things that PCRI has been doing for the past 28 years in terms of getting people into housing and providing for that home stability as well as economic stability for the African American community and really communities of color. Just a little bit about me. I have 17 and a half years in city government. I come from California, and I more specifically worked in the redevelopment agency. So when you're talking about tax increment financing and expanding the indebtedness for your project areas, those are all terms that really speak to me. In 2011, the governor of California ended redevelopment, and that really is one of the reasons why the state of California is in such a pinch for housing. In California, when you showed the chart that demonstrated the tax increment financing, 20% of that is set aside for affordable housing in California. And with the ending of redevelopment, there is no more additional money for affordable housing. So I'm happy to be here and to work collectively with the city of Portland and the residents too, in terms of getting people housed and getting people jobs and having economic prosperity for the people of color and really those individuals that are also in need for the same opportunities. There's a welcome party for me at Shine next Thursday from 5 to 8, and if you're interested in attending, please call PCRI and RSVP. Thank you.
Next Thursday?
Next Thursday.
Oh, I'm running a meeting next Thursday evening. Yeah. It's the CDI meeting next Thursday. But welcome. Thank you. I look forward to getting to meet you or getting to know you. Ida, okay? Thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate it. Everybody. Appreciate you guys staying through this conversation and the work.
I just want to make a quick comment to Ms. Horner. If you want to come back when you are more settled as in your new job and let us know what we can do to support you and PCRI to be as successful as you can be, I would really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. And there were some things that I heard and I've already noted a lot of things that we do need to talk to you folks about. So
Great. I look forward to it.
Yeah, we do as a team. Thank you.
So I'd just like to say I appreciate the community being able to come. I would like to see, if it's possible, to have more input from the community prior to the end of the meetings, if possible. There's a lot of information that's normally given to the community. A lot of times we can't see everything or know about this information, and it makes it sort of hard to understand. So the details, a lot of stuff that's here is good to have that information, but it would be good to be able to have it in hand so that we could see it to give the feedback. I just want to give some of my concern with the meetings that we've had, the length of time it's taken for the community to reap the benefits would be my concern. And just to give you a synopsis of what I've seen occurring in the community, which I'm sure a lot of you already know of what's going on. So there's a lot of programs that we have in the community, but I don't see a lot of our community reaping the benefits. We've talked about homelessness. We've talked about programs that are through Prosper or Portland Housing Bureau. And when you look at the number of people who have been displaced, who are homeless, who have problems buying a home, who have problems with renting a home due to the market and the number of population of people that are moving here, a lot of our people are not getting into those resources. I heard the report from Leslie. It's good to have a goal. My concern would be with the goal that the Portland Housing Bureau has, does it match the goal or the number of people who have been displaced or who, you know, just don't have housing? Okay, so those are my concerns. Okay, so this is why I'm saying that from what I see with the need that's out there, we do need more money. We do need more housing, wherever it comes from. I see a lot of housing going up in the Portland area for the rich. I see a lot of buildings being built that are duplexes, condominiums, rental units that are empty. Many of them are for higher income, but I'm not understanding why they're being built and left empty. Why can't those buildings be used for people who can't afford a higher rent, you know, or purchase of a home? Why can't they be used for people who have been displaced? I would like to see a town hall meeting with the mayor. I would like to see our community sit down and give him feedback or even recommendations on what has happened thus far, what he can do to maybe help move the process a little quicker for people who have been waiting for years and who have received nothing. When we're looking at all this going on here in Oregon, we can talk about the infill projects, we can talk about the housing by design, we can talk about, I don't know how many programs that are going on all over in the Lentz, Gateway areas, everywhere. The downtown area, which is the Pearl District, which I was shocked to hear that more monies are going in there, as I heard on the news the other day, number 13 for the best livable place as far as Money Magazine. So I just have a lot of concerns, and then I'm seeing that a lot of the policies that are being developed are discriminatory. And I'm still saying that a lot of those things that are happening in our community are still displacing people. And I don't see anything being done about it. I know there's a lot of programs. Some of these committees and programs I didn't even know we had in Portland. So I'm saying that there's a disconnect with community engagement, getting information out to our community who could be benefiting from a lot of these programs. I'm seeing more people that are coming into the city who either, you know, they have a lot of money or they just want to move here because they like the area or whatever, taking the resources that should be going to people who need them more.
I appreciate it.
So-
Thank you
so
so
those are
much.
my- those are my-
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I think you have many of the concerns that bring us to the table. That's why we're sitting here doing this work. Let me again encourage you to interact with any of the PHB staff if anyone is here with ongoing concern. Thank you so much for being here tonight for tonight's meeting. I think we've got some food left over. Is that right? Please take some with you. We appreciate your effort and energy. We will be back in November at our next meeting. What is it I'm asking, Dean?
Just want your committee to know that they got the bond information.
Oh, yeah. You can mention it.
I forgot to mention earlier that in your packets, you all got a copy of the most recent notification of the projects that are being developed out of the Portland bond. We announced on Tuesday, 9 projects for the bond, and Miss Jillian's organization was one of the lucky organizations that was selected. They're going to be redeveloping the Joyce Hotel in downtown Portland. So I wanted you to be sure that you had that information.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks, team. Appreciate your work. Have a great night. Bye-bye.
Ooh-wee.